They were too fast, too strange, or too dangerous, and they crossed a line no car was supposed to cross. These machines weren't just pulled from production, they were banned, buried, and erased from the spotlight by the very companies that built them. Some broke laws, some broke under pressure, and some were never meant to be seen by the public at all. Here are 13 banned American cars you've probably never seen. And once you find out why, you'll understand exactly why they disappeared. Number 1. The Wedge 1984 Pontiac Fiero Superduty 2.7 is perhaps the most astonishing American sports car you were never allowed to buy. A machine that in one prototype form shook General Motors so thoroughly that it was canceled not for failing, but for succeeding too well. In an era of malaise-era cutbacks, badge engineering, and stifled ambition, the Superduty Fiero wasn't just a bold concept, it was a mutiny. The Fiero, when it debuted in 1984, was already something rare. A mid-engine, rear-drive American car built not as a supercar, but as a commuter coupe. GM pitched it as economical and sporty, a fuel-efficient two-seater for a post-oil crisis world. But underneath that modest marketing was a secret. Pontiac engineers had always intended for the Fiero to become a performance car. They had lobbied hard to include a stronger frame, a central backbone design, and even provisions for larger brakes and future suspension upgrades, all on GM's dime. They knew the car was capable of greatness. They just had to prove it. Enter the Superduty 2.7. This wasn't a garden variety upgrade or a dealer package. This was a factory-engineered weapon, born out of Pontiac's secret performance group and developed in partnership with GM's racing division. The SD4, as it was known internally, was already a legend in SCCA and IMSA competition, an iron block race-grade four-cylinder used in Trans Am and GTU cars, capable of surviving 8,000 RPM track abuse with ease. Pontiac simply adapted this engine to the street. The resulting Superduty 2.7-liter Fiero prototype produced an astonishing 232 horsepower in naturally aspirated trim from a four-cylinder. Let that sink in. At the time, the Corvette made just 205 HP. The Mustang GT, around 175. This tiny 1,600-pound Wedge was suddenly faster, sharper, and more advanced than anything else General Motors was building, at any price point. The performance numbers were brutal. 0-60 in 5.7 seconds. A quarter-mile time in the low 14s, near-perfect weight distribution, a red line around 7,500 RPM, and it wasn't just a straight-line freak. The Fiero's short wheelbase and revised suspension made it incredibly nimble. On road courses, early test results suggested it could beat a 911 SC around tighter tracks. Some internal simulations even showed the Superduty Fiero outperforming the Ferrari 308 in certain conditions, a comparison that terrified GM execs even more than the Corvette implications. And yet, Pontiac had planned everything. They had revised cooling ducts to address the standard Fiero's overheating issues. They had re-engineered the cradle to handle the extra torque. A reinforced 5-speed manual was sourced and calibrated. There were even plans for a unique rear spoiler and wider wheels to hint at its capability without giving away the full story. So what went wrong? Success. The moment executives saw the numbers, alarm bells rang. The Corvette, GM's crown jewel, was just starting its rebirth with the new C4 chassis, a car built from the ground up as America's performance flagship. It was not supposed to be outgunned by a two-seater economy car wearing a Pontiac badge. GM's brand hierarchy was sacred. Chevy had performance, Cadillac had luxury, Buick had comfort. And Pontiac? Pontiac was supposed to be exciting, yes, but not embarrassing the Corvette. Internal memos from the time are filled with passive-aggressive concern. Confuses market segmentation, one executive wrote. Another warned of severe reputational fallout among premium buyers if Corvette is seen as second best. In less than 3 months, the Superduty Fiero project was frozen. Then it was canceled. Not delayed, not revised. Killed. Only a handful of Superduty Fiero prototypes were ever built. Most were destroyed or reassigned for parts. One, famously, was smuggled into private hands and survives today. A raw black test mule with SD4 badging and dyno sheets to prove its power. It has been exhibited at Fiero gatherings and vintage motorsports events, where stunned spectators gather around it like it's a UFO that it landed in a Kmart parking lot. The real tragedy isn't just that Pontiac built a car ahead of its time, it's that they weren't allowed to finish it. The Fiero Superduty could have rewritten the rules for what a mid-1980s American performance car could be. Light, high-revving, nimble, unique. It was, in some ways, a spiritual ancestor of the Lotus Elise, years before the Elise existed. One former GM engineer who worked on the car before being reassigned once said, "We built something America had never seen, and it scared the hell out of the company." In the end, the Superduty Fiero became a ghost, a cautionary tale. Proof that sometimes a car can be too good for its own badge, and that brilliance doesn't always survive the boardroom. Number 2, the 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst convertible is the kind of machine that feels more like mythology than metal. A singular ghost of Detroit's golden muscle age, built once, driven sparingly, and then locked away from the public eye like a dangerous secret too powerful to be shared. It wasn't just rare, it wasn't just fast, it was forbidden. A 5,000-pound thunderclap in gold and white, wearing the Hurst name like a crown, and casting a long, mysterious shadow over an entire era of high-horsepower hubris. At first glance, it seemed almost absurd. A Chrysler 300, a full-size executive coupe, reborn as a fire-breathing land missile with help from Hurst Performance. The same folks who gave us the Olds 442 shifters, the Ram Air drag monsters, and the legendary Hurst-Olds collaborations. The hardtop Hurst 300 was already wild. A limited-run beast with a fiberglass hood scoop, gold racing stripes, and a high-output 440 TNT V8, churning out 375 horsepower and a volcanic 480 OU of torque. But that car, at least, was real. It existed. 501 were built. People saw them, drove them, raced them. The same convertible? That's where the story shifts from history to whispered legend. Just on 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst convertible was built. Not one survives. One was ever made, and not by some aftermarket tuner or fan with a welder in their garage. It was hand-assembled by Chrysler, with direct input from George Hurst himself. The plan? To create the ultimate personal luxury dragster. A rolling paradox, drop-top luxury on the outside, pure tire-melting violence under the hood. Finished in spinnaker white with satin gold striping. The lone convertible looked like it had driven straight off a 70s pulp novel cover. It had the fiberglass hood with the molded-in scoop, the torque flight transmission, the specially trimmed white vinyl interior with gold accents and Hurst emblems. And under that sculpted hood, the 440 TNT, Chrysler's most potent full-size power plant, connected to a 3.23 Sure Grip rear end. This wasn't a cruiser, it was a luxury cruise missile. But here's where the mystery begins. The car was reportedly built to tour the auto show circuit, to stir excitement and maybe gauge interest in a run of 50 or 100 special convertibles. But something happened behind closed doors. Chrysler executives, already skittish about rising insurance premiums, tightening emissions regulations, and looming safety mandates, took one look at the hulking convertible with its racing stripes and 375-horse V8, and they flinched. Suddenly, the 300 Hurst convertible vanished, before it could even make its public debut. No ads, no brochures, no press release. The only car quietly disappeared into storage. For years, most assumed the convertible never existed. Some claimed it was a misremembered show car. Others believed it was crushed. But behind the scenes, the lone 300 Hurst convertible had passed through private hands, first within Chrysler, then allegedly within Hurst itself, and later to a handful of collectors who recognized its importance but swore to keep it off the radar. It wasn't until decades later, in the early 2000s, that the car reemerged. Meticulously restored, documented, and presented at the Chrysler Nationals where jaws dropped and questions flew. Where had it been? Why was it built? Why had no one heard of it? The answers are still only partial. Chrysler, when asked, has remained tight-lipped. Some internal documentation exists, a few memos, a couple of black and white photographs, but no official production record, because officially, there was nothing to record. Just one car, just one moment in time, one glimpse of what could have been. An engineer who saw the prototype in period once said, "It scared the hell out of everyone, not because it was dangerous, but because it proved Chrysler could still build a monster, and we were told not to." Today, this 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst convertible is a one-car conspiracy, a beautiful, booming, fire-breathing monument to what happens when ambition collides with bureaucracy. It was too bold, too powerful, too loud in a time when the industry was being told to quiet down. It was the last of the big talkers, the forgotten king of the boulevard, the what-if Chrysler never dared to answer. And if you're lucky enough to see it in person, don't blink. Because like any good ghost story, it tends to vanish just as quickly as it appears. Number 3. The 1990 Chevrolet Lumina Z34 DOHC V8 prototype stands as one of those remarkable chapters in automotive history that perfectly illustrates how innovation and ambition within a major manufacturer can sometimes be stifled by corporate caution and external pressures. At a time when the American mid-size sedan market was largely dominated by conservative, underpowered models, and the performance scene was shifting heavily toward agile European and Japanese competitors, GM engineers quietly pushed boundaries under the skin of the otherwise mainstream Lumina Z34. This particular prototype was conceived with a bold vision: to radically elevate the Lumina from a family sedan to a legitimate sports sedan contender. While the production Lumina Z34 came with a respectable 3.4L V6 engine delivering around 180 horsepower and sport-tuned suspension, the DOHC V8 prototype was an entirely different beast. Engineers replaced the V6 with a bespoke 4.2-liter dual overhead cam V8 designed to deliver smooth, high-revving power uncommon in American sedans of the era. This was a clean-sheet reimagining of the Lumina's performance potential, one that embraced modern engine architecture for maximum breathing efficiency and responsiveness. Under the hood, this V8 was rumored to produce more than 280 horsepower, a significant jump from the stock model, and enough to squarely challenge performance sedans like the BMW 325i and the Nissan 300ZX. The engine's dual overhead cams allowed for more precise valve timing and improved airflow, translating into an engine that not only produced strong peak power, but also delivered a linear and engaging power band. The car's chassis was modified as well, featuring upgraded suspension components, stiffer bushings, and larger disc brakes to handle the extra grunt. The prototype even had unique aerodynamic tweaks, including a subtle front spoiler and revised rear deck treatment to enhance high-speed stability and give the car a sportier stance. Despite these impressive technical merits and the car's thrilling performance potential, the Lumina Z34 DOHC V8 project faced steep challenges. Emissions regulations in the early 1990s were tightening rapidly, especially with the introduction of more stringent federal and California standards. The complexity of the DOHC V8's valvetrain and combustion system made it difficult to meet these new standards without costly re-engineering and advanced emissions controls, which would have raised the car's production costs considerably. Moreover, GM's internal dynamics played a crucial role in shelving the project. There was internal resistance to introducing a new V8-powered midsize sedan that could potentially cannibalize sales from GM's other performance and luxury lines, such as the Chevrolet Camaro, Pontiac Grand Prix, or even Cadillac models. Marketing was hesitant to position the Lumina as a true sports sedan when buyers still expected it to be a practical family car. These conflicting interests created a bureaucratic gridlock, and the prototype was quietly shelved with little fanfare. Only a small group of engineers, test drivers, and select executives ever experienced the Lumina Z34 DOHC V8 in action. Those who did recall a car that blended surprisingly sharp handling with a smooth, sophisticated V8 soundtrack, a fusion of American muscle with European finesse. A former GM engineer reflected years later, "It was a game-changer hiding in plain sight, the kind of car that could have rewritten the rulebook for American performance sedans. But business fears and emissions regulations crushed it before it could roar." Today, the Lumina Z34 DOHC V8 prototype exists mostly as a whispered legend, a glimpse into a parallel automotive universe where GM boldly redefined what a mid-size American sedan could be. No production model survived, and documentation remains sparse, but the project lives on in the memories of those who built it, a poignant reminder of how innovation sometimes must bow to market realities and regulatory pressures. It remains a testament to an era when American automakers still dared to dream beyond the expected, even if those dreams never fully came to life on the road. Number 4. The 1965 Mercury Comet FX Cyclone 427 SOHC stands as one of the most extraordinary yet enigmatic entries in muscle car history. A machine born from Ford's fierce determination to challenge the supremacy of Chrysler's 426 Hemi and dominate the drag racing world at any cost. This car was never intended for the showroom or the average enthusiast. Instead, it was a race-bred prototype designed to push the limits of technology, speed, and engineering. Only 11 of these ferocious beasts were ever produced, and each one was a rare, hand-built testament to American muscle's most daring era. At the heart of this Cyclone was Ford's legendary 427 SOHC engine, affectionately nicknamed the Cammer. Unlike conventional pusher-rod V8s common in the mid-1960s, the Cammer employed dual overhead camshafts per cylinder bank, a technological marvel imported from the world of European racing and the pinnacle of American engineering innovation. This 427 cubic inch beast was built to rev higher, breathe better, and deliver brutal, immediate power. In race trim, it churned out well over 600 horsepower and tremendous torque figures, unmatched by virtually any contemporaneous factory engine. Fitting this advanced engine into the Mercury Comet Cyclone chassis transformed the car's identity completely. The Cyclone's relatively lightweight platform was stripped of non-essential equipment and fitted with racing components to cope with the sudden flood of power. It was a brute force wrapped in a mid-size coupe's unassuming body, a car designed to strike fear into the hearts of competitors as it launched off the line with blistering acceleration and thunderous exhaust notes. Drivers who piloted the Cyclone at the strip described it as raw, merciless, and nearly uncontrollable at full throttle. However, this incredible performance came at a cost beyond mechanical complexity. The NHRA, the National Hot Rod Association, the era's foremost drag racing sanctioning body, saw the Cyclone's technological edge as a threat to fair competition. The radical overhead cam engine, coupled with the aggressive factory experimental AFX modifications, violated the spirit of the NHRA's rules. Within months of the car's debut, the Cyclone and its Cammer engine were banned from official NHRA competition. This decision effectively killed any chance of Ford selling the car or capitalizing on its extraordinary potential in the consumer market. The ban turned the Cyclone into a shadow legend, too advanced and powerful for the regulations of its time, yet too focused and specialized to find a place outside the racetrack. Ford quietly shelved the program, and the 11 factory-built cars remain locked away, their fates largely unknown. Over the decades, very few surviving examples have surfaced, often with incomplete histories, making the Comet AFX Cyclone one of the rarest and most coveted muscle car ghosts. From an engineering perspective, the Cyclone was a remarkable intersection of emerging technologies and traditional muscle car ferocity. The use of overhead cams in a mass-produced American V8 was revolutionary, predating the widespread adoption of such technology by decades. This engine layout allowed for higher engine speeds and better breathing, which meant more power and more thrilling performance potential. The Cyclone's ability to translate that power to the track was bolstered by a lightweight, minimalist chassis designed to minimize weight and maximize acceleration. Yet, this made it a handful to drive, requiring skill and courage to harness its wild capabilities. Many who witnessed or raced the Cyclone recall it as a car that tore through the muscle car scene like a thunderbolt, but vanished just as quickly. A veteran racer once remarked, "They were like rockets strapped to a Mercury, fast, unforgiving, and so far ahead of their time that the sport just couldn't handle them." NHRA put the axe down hard, and that was the end. The 1965 Mercury Comet AFX Cyclone 427 SOHG lives on in muscle car lore not just as a powerful machine, but as a symbol of the rebellious spirit of the 1960s muscle wars, a time when manufacturers threw engineering caution to the wind in a desperate quest for speed supremacy. Its legacy is the bittersweet story of brilliance, eclipsed by bureaucracy and regulation, a what could have been that still sparks imagination and reverence among collectors, historians, and muscle car enthusiasts worldwide. In many ways, the Cyclone encapsulates the wild, unfiltered essence of muscle car culture. Raw power, bold innovation, and the relentless pursuit of dominance, even if it meant running afoul of the rules. It's a reminder that behind every iconic muscle car lies a story of risk, rebellion, and the unyielding desire to build the fastest, fiercest machine on the planet. Number 5. The 1998 Dodge Ram T-Rex 6x6 concept is one of those extraordinary machines that seem ripped from the pages of a science fiction novel, yet it was very much a real breathing beast created by engineers and designers with a hunger to break every convention in the truck world. At a time when pickups were evolving from purely utilitarian workhorses to lifestyle statements and performance icons, Dodge sought to leap beyond the ordinary. The T-Rex wasn't just a bigger or tougher Ram, it was a revolution on wheels, a bold, aggressive statement that challenged everything anyone thought a pickup truck could or should be. The genesis of the T-Rex began with a simple but wild idea. What if a Ram could be stretched, armed, and transformed into a six-wheeled monster, combining the raw power of Dodge's already impressive V10 engine with the traction and capability of an all-wheel drive system designed for 3 axles. The result was staggering. Under the hood sat the formidable 8.0-liter V10, an engine known for its brute force and durability in Dodge's heavy-duty pickups. But the T-Rex's engineers took it to the extreme, tuning it to pump out an intimidating 497 horsepower and a tsunami of torque capable of hauling massive loads and obliterating obstacles that would stop lesser trucks dead in their tracks. However, horsepower was only part of the story. The T-Rex featured a 6-wheel drive setup with 3 solid axles providing unmatched traction across any terrain. This configuration gave it a footprint and grip akin to military vehicles and off-road monsters designed for unforgiving environments. Its suspension was fully adjustable with airbags, allowing the truck to adapt its ride height on the fly, from towering clearance for rugged trails to a more stable, lowered stance on highways. Locking differentials on each axle ensured that power was delivered efficiently to wheels with grip, eliminating the slip that plagues even the best off-roaders. The exterior design was equally jaw-dropping. The Ram T-Rex was lean, muscular, and imposing of hung, with aggressive fender flares that housed the 6 wheels, each wrapped in massive off-road tires. Its bold grille, sharp hood scoop, and robust bumpers made it look like a predator stalking the urban jungle or the untamed wilderness. The cab and bed were stretched to accommodate the extra axle and reinforced chassis components, ensuring that the truck could take a beating without breaking a sweat. Despite the engineering brilliance and the jaw-dropping aesthetics, the T-Rex concept was doomed by a combination of regulatory concerns, safety issues, and practical limitations. The sheer size and length of the truck raised questions about maneuverability in tight spaces, especially city streets and parking lots. More critically, the complex 6-wheel drivetrain and massive torque delivery posed a challenge for stability and control at high speeds or during emergency maneuvers. Internal safety evaluations revealed scenarios where the truck's weight distribution could cause unpredictable behavior, including dangerous oversteer or understeer in critical moments. These findings, combined with the evolving emission and safety regulations, put a firm halt to any hopes of putting the T-Rex into production. Chrysler executives, while impressed with the engineering achievement and the market buzz the T-Rex generated, ultimately had to consider liability and brand reputation. The risk of crashes or mechanical failures on public roads was deemed too high, and the company quietly shelved the project, consigning the T-Rex to the vaults as one of Dodge's most fascinating what-ifs. Only a handful of prototypes were ever built, and today those few remaining models are priceless collector's items that represent the wild ambition and technological daring of a bygone era. In the eyes of enthusiasts, the Dodge Ram T-Rex 6x6 stands as a symbol of what American muscle and utility vehicles could have been if manufacturers had dared to push boundaries even further. It's remembered as a mechanical titan, a fusion of raw power, off-road prowess, and audacious design, a truck that laughed in the face of convention and dared to dream bigger than anyone else. One Dodge engineer famously reflected on the project years later. The T-Rex was more than a truck. It was a statement. It said, "We're not here to play it safe. We're here to dominate." We built something that could conquer mountains and highways alike, but sometimes the road just isn't ready for the future. Though it never reached the streets or showrooms, the T-Rex's legend endures, a roaring reminder that true innovation often lives on the edge, and that sometimes the wildest dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, leave the most lasting impressions. Number 6. The 1973 Pontiac Firebird SD 455 convertible prototype represents one of the most intriguing what-if chapters in the history of American muscle cars. A rare, rebellious creation born from a blend of engineering ambition, raw power, and the desire to defy conventions during an era when muscle cars were being systematically dismantled by tightening regulations and changing tastes. While Pontiac's standard Firebirds of the time were celebrated for their bold styling and solid performance, the idea of pairing the monstrous Superduty 455 engine with an open-top convertible body was as audacious as it was risky, a move that challenged both engineering norms and corporate caution. At its core, the heart of this prototype was the legendary SD 455 V8, a hand-built, race-inspired power plant designed for brute strength and performance. With a displacement of 455 cubic inches, aggressive camshaft profiles, forged components, and reinforced heads, this engine was capable of delivering around 290 net horsepower and a gut-wrenching torque figure that easily exceeded 400 on the left. In a coupe body, the SD 455 Firebird was already a beast. Slapping that same engine into a convertible format pushed the boundaries of what was mechanically feasible at the time. The combination promised raw acceleration and the visceral thrill of an open-air muscle car that could launch off the line like a rocket and howl through the gears with a rumble that would rattle the nerves of any driver. However, the challenge was the convertible body itself. Unlike coupes, convertibles inherently suffer from less structural rigidity due to the absence of a fixed roof, a vital component that helps stiffen the chassis. When paired with an engine as ferocious as the SD 455, this weakness became a glaring problem. During test drives, engineers noted that the frame flexed alarmingly under the engine's torque and cornering forces. At high speeds and aggressive maneuvers, this flex translated into unpredictable handling, particularly dangerous oversteer that could catch even skilled drivers off guard. Suspension and chassis engineers scrambled to reinforce the frame with additional bracing and upgraded components. But these solutions added weight and still couldn't fully tame the car's wild temperament. Beyond the mechanical challenges, external pressures loomed large. By 1973, muscle cars faced an uphill battle against increasing insurance premiums, stricter emission standards, and shifting public attitudes favoring fuel economy and safety over raw power. Convertible muscle cars were especially vulnerable in this climate, as regulators and insurers viewed them as inherently risky. Pontiac's corporate leadership, eyeing the brand's long-term viability, balked at the prospect of releasing a vehicle that might provoke insurance headaches or safety liabilities, no matter how thrilling it was on paper. Consequently, despite the fiery promise of the Firebird SD 455 convertible prototype, the project was quietly scrapped before production could be greenlit. The lone prototype was hidden away, effectively erased from official records and public awareness. Pontiac's decision was pragmatic but heartbreaking for enthusiasts and engineers alike. A sacrifice made at the altar of practicality and compliance, rather than passion and performance. Today, the Firebird SD455 convertible prototype remains shrouded in mystery, a whispered legend among collectors, historians, and Pontiac aficionados. Photographs are scarce, official documentation is limited, and the car itself has become a near-mythic artifact. An emblem of the muscle car era's final defiant roar before the curtain fell, it stands as a symbol of ambition curtailed, of dreams too wild to be tamed by the realities of the day. One former Pontiac engineer, reflecting on the project decades later, captured the bittersweet essence perfectly. "We built a monster that wanted to run free with the wind in its hair, but the world wasn't ready for that kind of freedom anymore. So we put it back in the shadows, where it still whispers to those who listen." In essence, the 1973 Pontiac Firebird SD455 convertible prototype is more than a lost car. It's a testament to an era's unyielding spirit, a glimpse of muscle car glory that nearly was, and a reminder that sometimes the most legendary machines are those we never got to drive but forever wish we could. Number 7. The 1971 Chevrolet Corvette ZR2 is an extraordinary chapter in the legacy of America's sports car icon, a rare and fiercely uncompromising machine that represents the very peak of factory-built performance for its era. Designed as a no-holds-barred, track-ready racer cloaked in street-legal guise, the ZR2 was created to embody the raw spirit of Corvette's racing heritage, bold, brutal, and unapologetically aggressive. At the heart of this beast was the legendary LS6 454 cubic-inch big block V8 engine, a powerhouse rated at 425 horsepower and equipped with massive torque that seemed almost unfair in its magnitude. Official figures underestimated its real-world grunt, which some owners claimed edged closer to 450 horsepower. This engine was paired exclusively with the M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed manual transmission, renowned for its rugged durability and precise direct shifts, crucial for managing the engine's immense power under punishing driving conditions. But what truly set the ZR2 apart wasn't just its ferocious engine. Every aspect of the car's design was laser-focused on performance. The chassis was reinforced and outfitted with heavy-duty springs and shocks, a bigger aluminum radiator to keep the monstrous V8 cool during extended track runs, and beefed-up brakes designed to handle the immense stopping power required. The suspension geometry was tuned for tight, aggressive handling, and the tires were specially selected to maximize grip under the most demanding conditions. This was not a car for casual cruising. It was built to be pushed to the limits, time after time. Inside, the ZR2 was stripped bare to reduce weight and eliminate distractions. Gone were the comforts and conveniences typical of the standard Corvette. No power windows, no fancy sound system, minimal upholstery, and no insulation. The interior was Spartan, emphasizing function over form and reminding drivers at every turn that this was a race car, first and foremost. The ride was stiff, the noise unfiltered, and the driving experience raw, visceral, and immediate. Production numbers tell the story of its exclusivity. Chevrolet built only 12 ZR2 Corvettes in 1971, making it one of the rarest and most coveted models in Corvette history. These cars were never intended for the mass market. Instead, they were a halo project, an engineering showcase designed to prove that Chevrolet could still dominate on the track and produce a car capable of competing with the best factory-built racers anywhere in the world. However, the ZR2's extreme nature also spelled its demise. Chevrolet executives, worried about potential warranty claims, liability issues, and the car's limited appeal beyond hardcore racers and enthusiasts, pulled the plug on the program abruptly. Despite its stunning capabilities, the ZR2 was simply too raw, too specialized, and too expensive for the wider market. And so, after producing a mere dozen, the model quietly disappeared from the lineup. Today, the 1971 Corvette ZR2 exists almost as a legend, an elusive pinnacle of muscle car performance that collectors obsess over and historians revere. It embodies a time when American automakers still dared to build factory race cars for the street, pushing engineering and design to their outermost edges. Owning one isn't just about possessing a rare car. It's about experiencing a piece of automotive history that delivers unfiltered power, an aggressive character, and a racing pedigree unmatched by almost any other street-legal Corvette. One owner, recalling the intensity of the ZR2, once said, "It wasn't just a car, it was a wild animal trapped in fiberglass and steel. You had to respect it or it would chew you up and spit you out." The 1971 Chevrolet Corvette ZR2 stands as a testament to the audacity of American muscle, a symbol of the fleeting era when raw power and racing DNA converged to create something truly extraordinary. Too fierce for the masses, but forever immortal in the hearts of enthusiasts who understand what it means to chase the limits and embrace the roar of a real American legend. Number 8. The 1983 Ford Mustang RS Turbo occupies a fascinating and often overlooked chapter in Mustang and American performance history. In an era when turbocharging was still a relatively new and tricky frontier, Ford's engineers set out to harness the cutting-edge technology to transform the familiar Fox body Mustang into a truly modern performance machine. The RS Turbo was envisioned as a no-compromise, high-boost, forced induction powerhouse, a radical departure from the traditional V8 muscle formula that had dominated the Mustang lineage for decades. Yet it was also a victim of its time, an ambitious experiment hampered by the limitations of early 1980s technology and fuel quality. Under the hood, the RS Turbo featured a highly tuned 2.3-liter inline-4 engine fitted with a turbocharger capable of generating significantly more boost pressure than the later Mustang SVO would tolerate. This aggressive boost was designed to squeeze every bit of horsepower and torque out of the relatively small displacement engine, promising an exciting blend of lightweight agility and modern turbocharged punch. On paper, it represented a serious contender in the emerging world of turbocharged sports cars, aiming to blend sharp handling with surprising power delivery that could challenge V8 competitors on the road. However, the reality proved more complicated. The 1980s gasoline available in the United States was not up to the task of supporting such high boost pressures without inducing damaging engine knock, also known as detonation. This knock is a result of the fuel-air mixture combusting prematurely, a problem exacerbated under the extreme conditions of turbo boost and high compression. During testing, engineers found that the RS Turbo's engine suffered from persistent and severe knock issues, which threatened to cause catastrophic internal damage if the car was driven aggressively or under sustained load. The technology to manage these problems, such as advanced engine control units, ECUs, knock sensors, and high-octane fuels, was still in its infancy and not widely available. Compounding these challenges were concerns over reliability and warranty costs. Ford's engineering and executive teams recognized that releasing such a high-strung and temperamental turbocharged Mustang to the mass market could backfire if customers experienced frequent breakdowns or damage. At the same time, the turbocharging system added complexity and expense that did not align well with the Mustang's traditional market positioning as a relatively affordable performance car. Consequently, despite promising test results and the excitement the car generated internally, the RS Turbo project was quietly shelved before it reached full production. The lessons learned from the RS Turbo program, however, were not lost. Ford took these hard-earned insights and applied them to the development of the 1984 Mustang SVO, which featured a more conservative and manageable turbocharged 2.3 four-cylinder engine, lower boost levels, and improved engine management systems. The SVO proved to be a more reliable and better balanced package that could be marketed with confidence to buyers looking for performance without the headaches. In many ways, the RS Turbo served as the unheralded pioneer that paved the way for the SVO's success. Today, the 1983 Mustang RS Turbo remains a rare and almost mythical footnote in Mustang lore. Its existence is confirmed mostly through internal Ford documents, engineering notes, and a handful of prototypes that survive in private collections. It represents an era of bold experimentation, where manufacturers were pushing boundaries, but still grappling with the technological and infrastructural realities of the time. For enthusiasts and historians, it embodies the clash between ambition and limitation, a turbocharged dream that was ahead of its time but ultimately had to wait for the world to catch up. As one former Ford engineer once reflected, "We wanted to launch a missile, but all we had was a slingshot and low-octane fuel. The RS Turbo was that moment when innovation bumped hard into reality. The RS Turbo's legacy is thus a story of daring innovation constrained by circumstance. It reminds us that progress in automotive technology rarely comes in a straight line. It's a journey of trial, error, and sometimes shelved dreams that lay the groundwork for future breakthroughs. In that sense, the 1983 Ford Mustang RS Turbo is not just a canceled project. It's a symbol of relentless engineering ambition, a ghostly roar of turbocharged power that still echoes in the DNA of every Mustang that followed. Number 9. The 1990 Oldsmobile Achieva SCX W41 is one of the most intriguing and underappreciated performance cars to emerge from the late 20th century American automotive landscape. A compact front-wheel drive sedan that defied expectations and quietly challenged the muscle car orthodoxy. At a glance, the Achieva SCX looked like a conventional mid-size family car, with modest styling and unassuming dimensions that blended easily into suburban traffic. Yet beneath its unpretentious exterior lay a remarkable engineering feat that few outside of dedicated GM engineers and true enthusiasts fully appreciated. The W41 package was the pinnacle of Oldsmobile's engineering ambition at the time. It featured a high-revving 2.3-liter DOHC quad-4 engine tuned meticulously to produce an impressive 190 horsepower, exceptional for a four-cylinder engine in a front-wheel drive car of that era. More importantly, the engine was designed to rev freely up to 7,400 RPM, making it one of the highest revving production engines General Motors ever offered. The car was fitted with a sport-tuned suspension, larger brakes, and limited-slip differential options, all aimed at transforming what was normally a practical commuter into a nimble, driver-focused performance sedan. It promised not just raw power, but agility, responsiveness, and a rewarding driving experience that few American compacts dared to attempt. However, the story of the Achieva SCX W41 runs much deeper beneath the surface of its production model. Internal documents and insider testimonies reveal that Oldsmobile engineers didn't stop at the factory specs. Behind closed doors, they experimented with pushing the platform far beyond the showroom's conservative limits. Turbocharged prototypes and enlarged displacement testbeds were developed to unlock power outputs well above 300 horsepower, numbers that would rival or even surpass some V8-powered GM muscle cars, including some Corvette trims of the time. This turbocharged U41 in particular was said to deliver lightning-quick acceleration, with an unexpectedly fierce power delivery for a car of its size and drivetrain layout. Despite these exciting possibilities, corporate politics and marketing strategies within General Motors ultimately curtailed these advancements. The leadership was wary that a relatively affordable, nimble, and technologically advanced front-wheel drive sedan with such performance credentials could cannibalize sales of more established, flagship performance vehicles. There was a deeply entrenched belief that true muscle and performance belonged to rear-wheel drive V8-powered models, not compact four-cylinder sedans. The fear was that allowing the W41's full potential to reach the market would disrupt carefully managed brand images and sales hierarchies. Thus, the more aggressive turbocharged versions and experimental high-output W41 variants were shelved, their prototype cars dismantled or quietly hidden away, and the paperwork vanished into GM's vaults. The production version of the Achieva SCX W41 that reached dealerships was impressive but deliberately restrained, a compromise between the engineer's ambitions and corporate caution. It quietly slipped under the radar of many performance car buyers, overshadowed by flashier models and mainstream muscle cars with louder reputations. Today, the 1990 Oldsmobile Achieva SCX W41 stands as a symbol of what might have been. It represents a crossroads moment in American automotive history when innovation, engineering prowess, and changing market dynamics hinted at a new direction for performance vehicles, one that embraced precision, efficiency, and forced induction in smaller, lighter cars. The W41 was a pioneering platform that dared to challenge convention, but was ultimately restrained by the rigid marketing and brand doctrines of its era. For enthusiasts, the Achieva SCX U41 remains a rare gem, a sleeper in the truest sense, capable of surprising those who underestimate it. Its legacy is preserved through a passionate but small community of collectors and tuners who recognize the car's unique place in GM's performance timeline. They celebrate it not only for its inherent qualities, but also for the tantalizing glimpses of unrealized potential locked away in hidden prototypes and canceled projects. As one former Oldsmobile engineer reflected, the W41 was a car fighting against expectations, not just from the road, but from inside the boardroom. It was a small revolution that never got to shout. The Achieva SCX W41 thus remains a fascinating study in contrasts, a compact car built for subtlety and stealth, yet quietly packing the heart of a high-revving racer, a symbol of engineering ingenuity subdued by corporate conservatism, and ultimately a rare and intriguing chapter in the ongoing story of American performance cars that still resonates with those who appreciate the art of hidden power and engineering excellence. Number 10. The 1962 Dodge Polara Max Wedge Ramcharger 413 wasn't merely a muscle car, it was a high-octane statement of raw, unbridled power that perfectly encapsulated the muscle car arms race of the early 1960s. At a time when Detroit's Big Three were locked in a fierce battle to dominate drag strips across America, Dodge boldly pushed the boundaries of factory performance with the Ramcharger, a car that blurred the lines between street-legal vehicle and purpose-built drag racer. Every inch of the Max Wedge Polara was engineered for one thing: straight-line domination. At its core sat the legendary 413 cubic-inch Max Wedge V8, already a formidable power plant. Dodge's engineers took it to another level by fitting massive cross-ram intake manifolds, famously called Ramchargers, which effectively forced a pressurized, supercharged-like rush of air and fuel into the engine's massive displacement. This setup was revolutionary for its time, enabling horsepower figures that far exceeded factory ratings, with whispers among insiders claiming outputs that nudged beyond 420 horsepower. In an era when most cars barely cracked 300 HP, the Ramcharger was a rocket ship disguised as a sedan. Yet this was a beast that demanded a skilled, almost fearless driver. The Ramcharger's enormous torque made throttle control a challenge. Even slight misjudgments could send the car lunging forward with brutal force. Idle was notoriously difficult. The engine often wanted to stall at stoplights, and the clutch had to be carefully modulated to keep the car moving smoothly. The suspension was stiff and unforgiving, designed to maximize straight-line traction rather than cornering comfort, while wide drag slicks replaced street tires, turning the Polara into a rocket on asphalt, but a handful on regular roads. Inside, creature comforts were stripped back in favor of weight reduction, leaving drivers in a raw, mechanical cocoon. The Ramcharger's intimidating powertrain was paired with a stripped-down interior and minimal equipment, reflecting its singular purpose: to win races. It was the very definition of a street-legal race car, but one barely tamed enough to handle city streets. Driving it was akin to taming a wild stallion. It required respect, precision, and nerves of steel. Owners frequently recounted stories of barely making it through stoplights or dodging terrified pedestrians who underestimated just how fierce the car beneath the hood really was. As thrilling as it was, the Ramcharger's sheer brutality eventually caught the attention of regulators and insurance companies. The NHRA and other sanctioning bodies started imposing stricter rules to rein in factory-backed drag racing machines, particularly those that blurred the line between race car and street car. Public safety concerns, mounting insurance premiums, and growing emissions regulations soon forced Dodge and other manufacturers to rethink their factory race programs. The Ramcharger package was quietly discontinued, with most cars either crushed or converted to less extreme specifications. Only around 150 Dodge Polaras were ever equipped with the Max Wedge Ramcharger package. Making surviving examples extremely rare today, these cars are now among the most sought-after Mopar muscle cars, treasured by collectors for their raw, unapologetic performance and their place in the history of American drag racing. Each Ramcharger tells a story of a time when muscle cars were pure expression of power, unfiltered by modern-day safety or emissions concerns. It wasn't just it was a weapon on wheel, barely tamed and always hungry for the next quarter mile, said a Mopar enthusiast who once drove one on a back road. You didn't drive the Ram Charger, you survived it. The 1962 Dodge Polara Max Wedge Ram Charger 413 stands as a legendary testament to an era when automakers raced for dominance with reckless abandon. It embodies the brutal beauty, the engineering genius, and the raw, untamed spirit of muscle cars at their most extreme. It remains an icon not just of performance, but of the wild, untamed passion that made American muscle cars immortal. Number 11. The 1992 GMC Typhoon Prototype V8 AWD remains one of the most tantalizing what-if vehicles in American automotive history. A bold experiment that could have reshaped the landscape of performance SUVs long before the modern muscle ute explosion. While the production Typhoon carved its own niche with a turbocharged 4.3L V6 and all-wheel drive setup that both surprised many with its agility and punch, the V8 prototype pushed the envelope to near legendary status, representing an untapped well of raw power and technical prowess within General Motors. Conceived in the early 1990s, the Typhoon was GM's ambitious attempt to combine the rugged practicality of an SUV with the high-performance attributes typically reserved for sports cars and muscle machines. The production model's 280 HP turbocharged V6 and sophisticated AWD impressed critics and enthusiasts alike. But inside GM's engineering labs, a handful of visionary engineers believed they could take the concept further. By grafting a Corvette-derived small-block V8 onto the Typhoon chassis and carefully calibrating the all-wheel drive system to handle the dramatic power increase, they dreamed of creating a beast that could obliterate expectations on every front: acceleration, handling, and sheer visceral impact. The engineering feat was staggering. The prototype's 5.7-liter V8 displaced well over 300 horsepower and torqued up with an immediate growling force unlike anything the Typhoon nameplate had ever known. Unlike the smooth, turbocharged six-cylinder, this V8 engine delivered linear, brutal muscle car grunt, perfectly paired with a robust AWD system that put power to the pavement with surgical precision. Suspension tweaks ensured the SUV could launch hard without wheel spin, carve corners with unexpected composure, and throttle out of turns with commanding authority. This wasn't just an SUV with power, it was a machine designed to compete with the fastest sports cars of its day, while carrying 4 passengers and a handful of gear comfortably. But despite the prototype's staggering potential, corporate strategy reined it in. General Motors was cautious, recognizing that the V8 Typhoon could overshadow their established performance lineup, especially the Camaro Z28 and the revered Corvette C4, models that embodied the company's performance halo and drew loyal customers. There was no way to market a high-powered V8 SUV without cannibalizing sales or confusing the brand hierarchy. Additionally, the burgeoning SUV market at the time was still dominated by buyers seeking practicality over performance, and the marketing team worried that the Typhoon V8 would be too niche, too expensive, and too intimidating for the mainstream. Consequently, the V8 AWD Typhoon was quietly shelved, tucked away in GM's vaults, never to be officially tested or sold. The few who glimpsed it remember a truck that sounded like a muscle car, with the stature of an SUV, but the heart of a thoroughbred. Some whisper that GM engineers pushed the prototype to its limits on private tracks, clocking gross 60 times that rivaled exotic sports cars, but no official data or footage ever surfaced. The prototype was gradually dismantled, leaving behind only memories, whispered rumors, and a handful of technical notes buried deep within GM's archives. Today, the 1992 GMC Typhoon V8 AWD prototype is a near mythical figure among car collectors, historians, and enthusiasts. It represents a tantalizing crossroads where muscle car passion collided with utility and practicality, long before the world was ready for such a fusion. Its story is one of untapped potential, bold engineering, and corporate caution, a symbol of how market realities can sometimes stifle innovation even when the technology is ready to roar. It was like holding a live grenade in your hands. The power was intoxicating, but nobody wanted to light the fuse. Former GM engineer involved in the project. In hindsight, the V8 Typhoon could have been a revolutionary step, a glimpse into the future of high-performance SUVs that would eventually explode decades later, with modern muscle SUVs and crossovers dominating roads worldwide. Instead, it remains an elusive legend, a ghostly dream of muscle, speed, and style that never made it beyond the shadows of development rooms, reminding us of the thrilling possibilities that sometimes lie just out of reach. Number 12. The 1974 AMC Hornet 401XR stands as one of the most intriguing what-if stories in muscle car lore, a daring and radical attempt by American Motors Corporation to transplant a monstrous big block V8 engine into a small, compact car at a time when muscle cars were already fighting against tightening regulations and shifting market demands. This prototype wasn't just a minor upgrade or a performance trim. It was an audacious gamble to redefine the muscle car formula by cramming raw power into a surprisingly lightweight package, creating an unpredictable, almost reckless machine that could have rewritten the rules of muscle cars if it ever reached production. AMC had long been the underdog automaker, known for creating innovative, budget-conscious vehicles that often surprised the competition with their clever engineering and spirited performance. The Hornet was their compact car designed to compete with imports and domestic rivals, modestly sized, practical, and fairly unassuming. Yet, the engineering team, hungry to shake up expectations and capitalize on the muscle car craze, pushed the boundaries by fitting their 401 cubic inch V8, an engine normally reserved for much larger platforms, under the Hornet's diminutive hood. This 401XR engine was a hand-built powerhouse, delivering torque and horsepower figures that rivaled the era's fiercest muscle cars, including some Camaro and Mustang variants. But this was no tame upgrade. The 401XR produced an explosive surge of power that transformed the Hornet from a practical compact into a fire-breathing street missile. The car's acceleration was brutal. The torque was relentless and instantaneous, catching even seasoned drivers off guard. Wheel spin became the norm rather than the exception, and the car demanded respect behind the wheel. Yet, it wasn't just about raw power. This was a car that screamed for performance handling upgrades and to match the engine's ferocity, and that's where problems arose. The Hornet's lightweight chassis and suspension setup were not originally designed to contain the explosive forces unleashed by the 401 V8. Even with suspension tweaks and reinforced components, the handling remained twitchy and unpredictable, especially on wet or uneven surfaces. Early road tests painted a picture of a car that was thrilling but dangerous, a high-strung beast that could turn on its driver with sudden oversteer or frightening instability in sharp corners. The front-heavy layout caused traction issues, and the braking system struggled to keep up with the enhanced speeds. The safety concerns quickly mounted, and the project faced an uphill battle with emerging federal emission standards, which were becoming increasingly strict in the mid-1970s, further complicating any potential production release. Behind closed doors, engineers continued to push and refine the Hornet 401XR, experimenting with suspension geometry, brake packages, and drivetrain tweaks. But as the muscle car market itself began to wane under regulatory pressures and rising insurance costs, AMC's management grew cautious. The risk of releasing a car that could easily become uncontrollable or the target of liability lawsuits was too great. The automaker, already operating on thinner margins than the Big Three, could not afford a public relations disaster. As a result, the 401XR Hornet was abruptly shelved. Only a handful of prototypes were built, and those were used strictly for internal testing before being dismantled or hidden away in storage. There was no press launch, no dealership demos, just a ghost story whispered among AMC engineers and a rare curiosity for muscle car historians decades later. It was a car that wore a modest suit but carried a bazooka under its arm. Too dangerous, too wild, and far ahead of its time, recalled one former AMC test driver. Every time you floored it, you felt the car wanted to fling itself off the road, but it also begged you to try again. Today, the 1974 AMC Hornet 401XR remains a tantalizing what could have been in muscle car history. It embodies the raw ambition and spirit of a small automaker, willing to challenge norms and chase big dreams, even when the industry was shifting beneath its feet. The 401XR's story is a testament to the balance between innovation and safety, power and control, and the sometimes harsh realities that keep the wildest automotive dreams grounded. In the pantheon of muscle car legends, the Hornet 401XR is a shadowy figure, a compact colossus with the heart of a beast, forever remembered for its fearless attempt to rewrite the muscle car rulebook and for the untamed fury that never quite reached the streets. Number 13. The 1986 Ford RS200 Evolution holds a place in automotive history as one of the most extraordinary and enigmatic machines ever conceived, especially in the context of American motorsport and performance car culture. Born from the feverish intensity of the Group B rally era, the RS200 was Ford's bold statement of technological supremacy, marrying cutting-edge engineering with a singular, uncompromising purpose: to dominate the unforgiving rally circuits of Europe with a car that could deliver blistering speed, razor-sharp agility, and race-winning reliability under conditions that tested both man and machine to their limits. The RS200's core was its groundbreaking chassis, a lightweight mid-engine layout optimized for weight distribution and balance, allowing it to dance through the tightest corners and power down the longest straights with equal ferocity. Its bodywork, designed with the aerodynamics in mind, was aggressively sculpted to produce downforce without sacrificing the compact footprint crucial for rallying narrow mountain passes and forest roads. Under the hood, the Evolution model boasted a turbocharged 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine that, thanks to a combination of cutting-edge turbo technology and meticulous tuning, churned out more than 600 horsepower in race trim. This prodigious output, when combined with a curb weight barely surpassing 2,400 pounds, produced an astounding power-to-weight ratio that put the RS200 Evolution in supercar territory, making it one of the fastest and most nimble rally cars ever built. While the RS200's legend was largely forged on European rally stages, the car's presence in the United States was both limited and shadowy. Ford imported a very small number of RS200 Evolutions during 1986 as homologation and test vehicles, ostensibly to study their advanced technology and explore possible avenues for adaptation into American rally or high-performance projects. These cars were federalized for limited road use or closed course testing, but never intended for full-scale production or public sale. Their arrival sparked excitement among enthusiasts who recognized the car's potential as a groundbreaking performance machine. Yet they remained almost inaccessible to the public and kept under tight control by Ford. However, the RS200's rise was meteoric and short-lived. The Group B Rally Series, celebrated for pushing the envelope of speed and innovation, was also infamous for its recklessness and tragedy. The extreme power levels and minimal safety regulations led to catastrophic accidents during the mid-1980s, resulting in deaths of drivers, co-drivers, and spectators alike. These tragedies shook the motorsport world and prompted the FIA to impose a ban on Group B cars starting in 1987, effectively ending the era and condemning the RS200 and its peers to an abrupt retirement. In America, this ban had a ripple effect. The RS200 Evolutions imported for testing quickly became untouchable. Their extreme specifications, combined with the absence of street-legal compliance, meant that further importation was blocked, and the existing fleet was confined to private collections or corporate garages. Moreover, with the public and regulators increasingly wary of such untamed machines, the RS200 Evolution's dream of American rally domination was snuffed out before it could truly ignite. Today, the story of the 1986 Ford RS200 Evolution in the United States is more legend than fact, a tale passed down by engineers, collectors, and rare enthusiasts who glimpsed the car's ferocity firsthand. Just a handful of these machines ever crossed the Atlantic, and fewer still remain today, their whereabouts often cloaked in secrecy. Their rarity and exotic pedigree have made them holy grails among collectors, representing a fleeting moment when technology and ambition converged to produce something transcendent, yet dangerously volatile. One former Ford test driver describes the RS200 Evolution as a bullet with wings, fragile but fearless. It demanded respect with every throttle blip, a machine that was almost alive in its hunger for speed but could turn on you without warning. Others who witnessed it noted how it sounded like a banshee on the loose, a piercing wail that cut through forests and mountain passes with haunting precision. In retrospect, the RS200 evolution embodies the paradox of 1980s motorsport innovation, a period of unprecedented technological advancement shadowed by the perils of pushing too far, too fast. It was a car that promised a new future for rally racing and performance driving, but was ultimately curtailed by safety concerns and regulatory intervention. For American enthusiasts and historians, the RS200 evolution is a symbol of both unfulfilled potential and the ruthless realities of automotive progress. A forbidden supercar whose brief, blazing presence still captivates imaginations, reminding us of an era when engineers dared to dream beyond the horizon.